Today it gives me great pleasure to introduce you to John Hamilton on the Inspiring Women Leaders podcast. As a very talented Chief People Officer at Bellrock Group, John has accountability for strategic leadership and transforming people's strategy to drive a healthy culture at the same time as optimizing business performance. Now, I said to my husband earlier, Jonathan Bowman-Perks, for anybody who doesn't know, but I said to him, he asked me, what was my next meeting? And I said, I was doing a podcast with John Hamilton, and I was really excited. And his first response was, it wasn't, who's John Hamilton? Jonathan said, oh, amazing. He is such an amazing supporter of the charity, your team, and of you. I'm so pleased you're doing a podcast with him. And I just thought that was testament to you, because I don't know, have you ever met Jonathan?
Yeah, I met him a couple of times at sort of dinners and events in connection with you. We've spoken a couple of times.
Yeah, well, it must mean that I'm unconsciously sharing how inspiring you are as I'm having conversations about what's going on in the world, what we're doing with work and charity. And I think it's a real testament to you and how supported we feel as an organisation based on the work that you're doing with us. So I just wanted to acknowledge that first of all. And one of the key reasons actually as to why I really wanted to interview you on this podcast. But just to begin with, tell us a little bit more about your role today, and also about what Bellrock Group does, because it might not be known to everybody.
Sure. So, well, thank you for the introduction, Leigh. It's very kind. It's always weird to hear nice things said about you. So thank you for that. So Bellrock Group, we're a property and facilities management business, about £200 million turnover, 1,600 or so colleagues up and down the land. So we're a very geographically diverse organisation. We are very diverse in terms of the types of roles that we employ. So we employ professional and technical colleagues like software developers and estate surveyors and project managers and asset surveyors and fire engineers. And then we employ frontline colleagues like cleaners and security guards and caterers. And we employ mobile engineers in vans, and everything in between, really. So it's a kind of end-to-end property business, private equity owned. So what that means is we're all about growth. We're all about growing the way that we grow our business, both kind of organically through doing more of what we do, but also kind of through merger and acquisition. So acquiring businesses that complement what we do and build a wider value proposition for our customers. So it's an extremely exciting place to be in terms of that growth agenda. We're not a business that's kind of bumping along doing what we do. It's all about how can we do more of the things that we do for our customers. So that's kind of the company. My role, I'm the Chief People Officer, so I lead the wonderful people team that I've got at Bellrock, a team that we've built really carefully over the past 2 or 3 years. I'll tell you a story, Leigh. I inherited the HR team as it was then 3 or 4 years ago. There was about 8 of them, and they were really stretched. I mean, they were lovely people, but they were super, super stretched. The business historically hadn't invested in its HR agenda. And I described the team at the time as running around the business, putting fires out and just about paying people. And that was really just because of how busy they were. And what we've been able to do is to really invest in that team. So that team's now 22 people. There's a learning and development function. We've got a graduate program. We've got much expanded apprenticeship program. We've got a fantastic talent acquisition team that are bringing talented people into our business. We're doing lots and lots of other things, as well as running around the business, putting fires out and paying people, which is the kind of core kind of HR employee relations function. So yeah, I feel very privileged to lead that team, because they're hugely talented, ambitious group of people that are just helping make Bellrock a really great place for people to want to come and work.
Yeah, and you know what's right, because you said that you're private equity owned, and private equity, it doesn't always have the best reputation out there when you couple that with extensive growth. So, but it sounds like actually it's a very different experience, probably partly because of the work that you do in helping to transform and grow the organization as well. But Tell us a little bit more about that dynamic.
Yeah, I mean, you're quite right. I mean, the private equity's reputation is one for kind of cost cutting and squeezing organisations to deliver more for less. And we're not any worse. We're not any different from that in terms of a business efficiency perspective. I guess the difference is, and maybe what I bring to the exec leadership team is the recognition that people are absolutely what drives that growth for us, and not just people, but the right people, motivated, inspired, growing, fulfilling their potential, all of those things. They are what will deliver that growth. So I'm really fortunate to work with a forward-thinking organisation that recognises that investing in those people will lead to those desired outcomes. And that investment in my L&D team, in the DE&I work stream that I'm sure we'll come on to talk about, is all about finding a way to attract the very best talent that's out there, and not just attracting them, but making them, positioning themselves as an employer of choice. And then when they're here, they'll never want to leave. And I don't want to sound that like some kind of cult, but my mission statement for our people strategy is to be an employer of choice, to attract the best talent, and create an environment where they want to spend the rest of their career here. Because I think if you do that if that's your output, then you've got all the inputs right. You're paying people, you're paying and rewarding them well, you're giving them opportunities to grow, you're treating them fairly and with respect, you're giving them opportunities for development. If you do all of those things, then why would they want to go and work? Why would they want to go and work anywhere else?
Yeah, people work for you because they want to, not because they have to, and that sense of loyalty, which is a really great ethos. And do you find along the way that you have to fight for that there are certain challenges as a HR director, and having worked in HR in the past, there's always some tension sometimes that exists between a really great vision, really great passion for people, and actually bringing the business with you. So what lessons can we learn from you around how you're navigating that successfully?
Yeah, I think the tension is partly dissipated by the pragmatic way that certainly I and my team approach a people strategy. So we're not holier than thou about it. We recognize that we are here to support the needs of the business. We're not here to our own ends, right? We have to be here to support them. They're our customers. So that's sort of kind of baseline for us is like, okay, we're not a means to an end. We're here to support the business. So therefore, the strategy that we focus on is about being there in the best shape we can to support the business with its needs, which is about attracting, retaining, and developing talent. So I think that we get a pretty decent press with our senior colleagues here, simply because we are seen as being part of the solution, and not just somebody that's wagging the finger or insisting on process or boxes to be ticked. We're actually here pragmatically to help them do what they need to do. And it's interesting. I think one of the things that I've brought to the team is that customer focus. So I have a commercial facilities management background. I was an operator. I had paying customers. If my paying customers didn't like the way I did my job, they'd probably go and find someone else to do it, right? So I don't see that as an internal function like the people team are, that they're any different. We've got internal customers. And one of the things that we did was develop an internal customer charter for our customers. Yeah. And we mapped that to our the wider organizational behaviors and values to say, look, these are the things that we as a team are going to do. And that was really, there was some hard edge stuff about being responsive to their needs. But then there was the softer things about, I can't remember the exact line, but it was about we will put ourselves in the shoes of our customers. We will see the problem from their perspective. So if it was a pay issue, we'd recognize, my payroll team, who are wonderful, but obviously have processes to follow, will recognize the implications of those processes on our customers. So if it's a failure in processing overtime or incorrect, an error in something, they'll recognize the fact that has a direct impact on somebody's well-being and welfare in terms of their end zone. So the team just changing that mindset, really, recognizing that we are supporting people, and those people are crucial in terms of the wider success of the business.
Yeah, I absolutely love it. And it just brings me back to maybe an experience that I've had in the past, actually, when I was consulting into one of the banks during the financial crisis or post-financial crisis, actually, because we were doing audits and culture change development programs. And I remember the chief people officer saying to me at that particular time, surely, Leigh, if you play it mean, you keep them keen, you get them working harder, and you'll get better outcomes and results. And now, clearly, this is so polarized. It's almost at the opposite end of where you come from. But I think there's
it's very transactional. It's a very transactional leadership style. That, it's almost, a manufacturing kind of crack the whip type mindset, which just doesn't work.
Yeah.
We know that whatever environment you're working in, sure, you have to have rules, you have to have discipline, you have to hold people accountable for the performance that they're required to do. But there's ways and means to get there, I think.
Yeah. Which is maybe why there was some of the crisis in the first place, when you create a culture of fear.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Can't contribute and be honest and transparent. Now, what is really clear, and as I alluded to in my introduction, and I think as people will start to hear this in your own narrative about your ethos around leadership and your role within the organization. But what really strikes me, if it's not clear yet, but having worked with you for quite some time now, is that it's not just about the practice of people, diversity, inclusion, and strategy. And to me, it lies at the very core of who you are. It's almost like deeply held within your DNA, your belief system. It's not just a job title for you. It's not about business performance. It seems more like a calling. So where do you think this derived from, and what were the influences along the way?
Sure. Well, I'm the child of a single mother. So, and as me and my mum and my sister. So I suspect that, and my mum was a fairly strong woman. Maggie Thatcher was her hero, politics aside, but she was really drawn to kind of strong female figures. And I think that obviously has an effect on you. Subsequently, I have two daughters and a wife, so I want no choice but to be a bit of a feminist, really. And I'm so proud of my kids, the way they're finding their way in the world. I mean, they're 25, 26, and 22 now, and both full of ideas around, and I'm so proud of them for what they're achieving in the worlds that they're finding their way in. So I think that's the core of me, really, is there's the kind of, what's my belief system orientated around? It's around fairness and equity, irrespective of your, gender identity or ethnicity or whatever, right? But that probably stems from that upbringing, and seeing, obviously seeing a strong woman in my mother succeed in bringing up two kids, as well as working, as well as doing all the other things that a single mother has to do. It's quite awe-inspiring up close. So that's probably the core of that. I think more widely, it's just the right thing to do. There's no other way of saying it. It's just the right thing to do, whichever way you want to frame it. So from an equity perspective, from a diversity and inclusion perspective, it's just the right thing to do. But it's also the right thing to do for business as well. And I'll frame it in this way, right? So we've, the hardest part of my world is talent acquisition. It's a really tough market to recruit people in, to recruit really good people in. So logically, like if you're let's take our mobile engineering workforce, it's like 98% male.
Yeah.
And, if we're going to be a business where people look at us as a female going, well, that's not for me, we are disenfranchising half the workforce, right? Yeah. That's before you start looking at ethnicity or, LGBTQ plus or whatever else, whatever community that you might want to appeal to as an employer. Like, if you're not presenting yourself as being a place for anybody to work, whoever they are, then you're disenfranchising large parts of that workforce, and people aren't going to look at you and think that's a place for me. Yeah. Now, on the contrary side, if you do this stuff well, people look at you and go, I feel at home there, right? That feels like somewhere where I want to be, where I'm going to be respected. I'm going to have equal opportunity. I'm not going to be treated any differently. I can be my authentic self, all of these things. And I interviewed somebody for a role yesterday. And this is a young female I was interviewing. She hasn't made the choice to go to university. She wants to go into the world of work. And we're interviewing her for a role. And if you ever, anybody watching this ever gets interviewed by me, right? My opening question is, why Bellrock? Why this role, and why now? Nice, easy opportunity for you to tell me around about yourself. What is it about us you like?
Yeah.
And this lady, a very, very impressive young lady, who had done her research on us as a company, looked up me as well, which is always a bit weird. Like, starts quoting stuff I've said that she probably knew more about me than I did. But she'd found on our careers website a section called Women at Bellrock. And this was about, I don't know, 15 or 16 short pieces that we did for International Women's Day, where we interviewed some really amazing women in our business, women heroes in our business at all levels, not just senior, but right across our business. And we asked them questions around, what was it like to be a woman working in a particularly male-dominated profession, which property tends to be, but also, how they'd overcome, who were their heroes, how had they balanced their life, how had they succeeded, telling these amazing stories. And that's up on our careers website. And this young woman that I was interviewing said, I was so impressed by that, because the fact that you're talking about it, that I thought, I want to work here. Right. So although it's the right thing to do, right, and whatever your personal story is, this is also good business practice as well, because that's a talented individual that absolutely wanted to come and work here and could work anywhere else. Yeah. So, I was taken aback that piece of work we done is actually having that effect on somebody.
I think this leads on to areas of the strategic themes that you are working with at Bellrock at the moment as part of that transformation. So talk to us a little bit more about how you're tackling getting more equality, equity, inclusion, diversity right across all of the ranks. Because you recognise that there's often a challenge there. What's the work that's going on at the moment to help to address that?
Yeah, so you could argue we're late to the game, but I suppose as a growing organisation, that you get to a size where you have to do this stuff. It's what grown-up organisations do. So we are coming to this later than others are, but that's great for us, because we can learn, we can have a look around and see what good looks like, and we can decide what we like the look of, and then we can do our own thing on top of that. So we launched our DE&I strategy the day before International Women's Day this year. We've got about, of our 1,600 employees, about 1,300 of them are tech enabled. So they have the ability to join a Teams call. We had over 300 of our colleagues join that DE&I launch, which is like, bearing in mind people have got day jobs and they've got things to do. 25-30% of our employees took time out of their day to join a call to talk about the launch of the strategy against the backdrop of International Women's Day, and then listening to a panel interview where some of those strong women that I talked about, those amazing women that I talked about themselves. And it was an all-women panel. And even the fact that it was an all-women panel was commented on as, that's amazing, that's so awe-inspiring. It's really, these are men, what's the word I want to use? They're icons for people in their role models. That's the word I want to use. They're role models for other women to see what's possible. So that was the launch of our strategy, and on the back of that, we formed a brand new DE&I steering group that's representative from everybody in the business. It's not on hierarchy. It's basically for people at all levels, and that team has come together, developed a new DE&I action plan. We've launched 3 DE&I employee resource groups now. So our Pride one is probably the most active. That's for LGBTQ+. Unique is our neurodiverse ERG, and Ability is our disability ERG. And those 3 groups are now getting up and running, and looking at generating resources and signposting help, running campaigns and promotions to raise awareness for each of the communities and groups that they represent. Now, we're like, what are we, 8-9 months into this now? And there's bits that we've done, but there's lots that we haven't done yet.
Yeah.
But the most impressive thing that I'm seeing is the fact that we're now talking about it. So we might not have done a lot of the actions. Our action plans are kind of 2-3 year action plans, but we're having dialogue and debate all the time and discussing things. I'm having conversations with individuals that I just wouldn't have had 8-9 months ago. They just would not.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm reasonably senior in our organization. I'm very senior in our organization. I'm having people stop me in the corridor and thanking me for creating an environment where they can talk about things that are important to them, whether it's a hidden disability, whether it's the fact that they're neurodiverse, they might have autism or ADHD, or whether it's that they're LGBTQ plus, or actually, a couple of members of our Pride group. One is the father of a son who came out as gay, right? And the other is a father of somebody who transitioned. So they're like, they come to you and say, I don't know if you'd value my input. And you're like, absolutely we would. Like, this isn't just about people who are in those communities. It's about people who are allies to those communities and can give us a different perspective and open our eyes to, how this affects people, irrespective of whether they are, LGBTQ plus, coming out, not coming out, family members or what have you. So like these conversations, that would not have happened. Would not have happened 8 or 9 months ago. And I think that's the thing I'm most proud about, is actually without actually doing anything, we've done something, if that makes sense.
Yeah. And it strikes me that you say that you're late to the party, and I think that's probably reflective of the type of organization that you are. But what's testament to you and also to Bell Rock Group is how in 8 to 9 months, that is nothing for a transformation program, and especially to build sufficient psychological safety where people are participating, they're engaging, they're communicating. I've seen organizations that just don't achieve that over the space of years, decades, and they have to revert back to a fresh strategy.
This is not. I've got this phrase that I don't know where I picked it up in my career, but this is not a t-shirt mouse mat exercise. This is not about putting a little promo together and ticking a box and saying you've done it. This has got to be around next year and the year after that and year after that, and it just becomes the way we do things around here. But it is about being nimble and agile as well, and also it's about being honest with people about where we are. So where we've looked at, we asked, we ran a staff survey, an employee engagement survey in I think February, March this year. So right at the start of this journey, and we thought a DE&I steering group. We sat down. It would be really great to collect some data around what people's views and attitudes are about DE&I in our business, and we've not done this specifically before. And we sort of treat it a bit as a baseline. Where are we now? Before we really get going with this, where are we now? So we asked this question. We asked a series of questions, 12 or 13 questions, and it was the questions like, I can be my authentic self at work. I'm giving an equal opportunity to progress. I'm treated with respect. Questions like that. But what we did was we asked a load of questions. We asked 4 questions that allowed us to segment the responsive by different D&I characteristics. So we asked people whether they were LGBTQ plus. We asked what people's gender identity was. We asked whether they whether they were minority ethnic. And we gave them different, obviously a long list of ethnicities to pick from, and we also asked them whether they considered that they had a health condition or disability that impacted on their ability to work. So we asked these 4 questions, and we were really nervous about whether people would, even because they were all optional, of course. We were really nervous whether people would respond, give us that data, because without it, the other D&I questions are hopeless. Unless you can segment and say, okay, well, the difference between white British and ethnic minority is this. Therefore, if you can't do that, what are they telling you? And about 90% of survey respondees gave us answers to those 4 questions. Now, that in itself was so powerful, because it told me that they trusted us. They were happy to give us super sensitive data about their sexual orientation or their gender identity, or whether they had a disability or not. So that really fired me up. That's our starting point, as people really trust us to give us that data, because they recognize that we'll treat it with the confidence that we said we would, right? And this is an internally run survey, so that's a big deal. But also that they knew they could see the value to us of sharing that data with them.
Yeah.
And then what we did with the data was then obviously segment it. And I'll give you an example of very quick actions that we put in place on the back of that survey data. So there were two questions there that one was, I have witnessed instance of discrimination or bias in the workplace. And there was another question that said, I would feel comfortable reporting instance of discrimination or bias to my manager or HR. And what you saw is, if you looked at anybody who answered that question, who was minority ethnic, more likely to see incidents of discrimination or bias, less likely to feel comfortable reporting it. People LGBTQ plus, more likely, less likely. People who said they had a disability, much more likely to witness instances of discrimination or bias, much less likely to feel comfortable reporting about it. Those stats made me feel really uncomfortable, because those two questions go hand in hand. And within a month of running those reports, and this data, we had mobilized and launched and promoted a new Speak Up portal for all of our colleagues across the business. So it's an independent facilitated portal where if someone's witnessing something or they're not happy about something, they can go on there, and I've got an independent HR consultancy that will facilitate the investigation of any of those incidents. Now, that's not because I thought we had lots of these incidents. It's about giving people that safe space where they can raise and escalate those concerns.
You shared a story with me the other day about, and I think it was an individual or a group that had shared about when they're asked about their weekend. What that means for them. And first of all, I just want to acknowledge, it tells me that you've got so much compassion as well as the ability to listen, that you share so many stories at a very deeply personal level. But just share that story. I think it's an important one, because that was actually a shock for me as well.
It was our pride. So I talked about the International Women's Day launch. Our next webinar that was around pride. So we had our Pride ERG that was newly mobilized, and we followed the same pattern. We had a bit of a launch, bit of an update, and then we had a panel of people who were either LGBTQ plus, or we had one of our account directors who's a strong ally for LGBTQ plus, and they were sharing their personal experiences, incredibly brave, in that. But there was a couple of things that came out of that. One was quite amusing. One of the panel members said, I am pansexual. Okay, and there was a conversation about it. I was around various buildings in our business for the next couple of days, and people come up to go, I had no idea what pansexual was. That's a small example of the learning and awareness and the education that people get from these sessions. In our company, the Googling of the word pansexual must have spiked because everyone was learning what that meant. But it just that it is educational. But the other thing that we learned, and again, this was something that I have to say I learned, was we talked about the symbolism of rainbow lanyards or rainbow badges, or stickers or what have you. And what somebody on the team was saying is, look, if I am gay, if I've got a same-sex partner, I'm coming out to you in every conversation I have with a stranger. So if I come into work on a Monday and my colleague asks me, how was your weekend? I've got a choice to make about whether I'm coming out to you around how much I tell you about my weekend. Because if I say I was with my partner and she and I did this, if I'm lesbian, then that's me coming out, right? So I've got to make that decision every time I have that conversation with you. If you're wearing a rainbow lanyard, that it's not just I always thought they were like promotional things, like to promote the agenda. What they were saying is that that's actually creating that safe space. If you're wearing that rainbow lanyard, I am identifying you as somebody that's a safe person for me to have that conversation with, because you appreciate and understand my situation, right?
Yeah.
And I'd not seen that. Like, I had not had that thought at all. I just thought they were,
me neither.
Promotional. Like, I thought they played a part, but not in that way. And I think it's that kind of learning that we take, all of us take. I like to think I'm quite informed about this area, but I'm learning all the time. And I think when you realize that, again, there were over 300 people on that call. So
Yeah.
if that's 25-30% of our workforce made the time to join a call, we know from our survey analysis that around 7% of our workforce are LGBTQ plus. So that shows that 3 times as many people on that call were there as allies to Pride and to the LGBTQ plus agenda. That makes me so proud that we've created that environment where lots of people are dialing in to learn more and just be educated and feel connected. It was awesome, absolutely awesome.
It says so much for the culture, because there's a sophistication about that, where conversations can happen in such a psychologically safe way, without the fear of being judged, without the fear of, dare I use the word, but cancelled, without the fear of being berated. That actually it just becomes, actually we just need to understand more. It creates a very safe environment for people to question, for people to open up, to share. I absolutely love it. And I think it's those moments when you're dealing with strategy and transformation at an organizational level, it's actually in those moments that matter, the moments of truth, which is actually about the dialogue, the quality of the dialogue that happens at the real true level between groups, between one human to another, and the environment that you're creating around that. So lovely for you to share. Now, just as an aside, still on the same topic, but I also heard recently from somebody very senior that I work with in the financial sector, not to label the financial sector, but they were saying that their new global chief people officer equivalent was coming in and closing down anything that was diversity and inclusion related in terms of programs. And I wondered what your thought was on that, when there's this temptation to move on from the agenda to other things, thinking it has no longer any relevance, particularly in the current climate. Just any thoughts that you can offer?
Yeah, well, I mean, I talked about recruitment earlier and like in nuts and bolts terms, you're disenfranchising valuable pools of talent that you can access if you don't present yourself as being a home for everybody. So that's that, right? I think the other thing, and I know we're from a diversity perspective, we are not perfect. We're a long way from perfect, particularly at senior levels. And I think all the evidence says that diverse boardrooms, diverse senior teams make better decisions. Like it's beyond doubt that that's the case. I think to have different perspectives in the same room, to avoid everybody thinking the same and that kind of group think. If everybody's thinking the same, then nobody's thinking, right? So it's I just think it's different perspectives. Personally, I'm kind of uncomfortable with that being a white male. I'm being honest about it. I've had to get my head around why am I the right person as a white male to preach about DE&I. Maybe preach is the wrong word, but to eulogize about it when I'm a white male in a privileged position, in a senior position in an organization. I would, easy for me to say, isn't it? I guess, but I've kind of come to terms with that and done a lot of work on this with colleagues around how I feel about leading the agenda, and recognizing that by being an ally to this agenda and being an ally to those communities and using my seniority and my privileged position that I've got to drive change. And the relationship we've got with yourselves is a no better example of that. That I am in a position where I'm able to make a difference by the relationships I build with people around the business, and hopefully not in a way where people think that I'm not authentic or credible in those opinions. And I like to think that that's the case. I'd find it very painful if somebody thought, well, what do you know? You're a white male. When I'm working my hardest to kind of make a difference to that.
Yeah, and I
don't know. What do you think, Leigh? I'm going to ask you a question. What do you think? It's an interesting one, isn't it? I mean, the fact that I raised this to you when we spoke. I'm a male coming on a podcast that's talking about leadership, women in leadership.
I think what's really interesting, I like to see the human, the person behind every agenda, behind every initiative, behind every intention. And I think labeling is very dangerous, just collectively and individually anyway. And I think we will make more progress on the diversity and inclusion agenda if we move away from labeling, because that creates assumptions, and those assumptions will inevitably lead us down the wrong path, because we've all got our own thought patterns, we've all got our own histories, we've all got our own assertions, and then we look across social media and all these influences that are around us, and it means that our labels, they're not always positive, and also they're not always reflective. So I had a situation the other day where, as CEO of the charity, and we were doing a speaking event, and one of the people on the line said, it'd be really great if you bring this other type of person along to the event as well to speak with you, because people only see you as a privileged white female. And I'm like, wow. Then if that's the way that we're creating our narratives now, then we are not seeing the intersectionality, how
No, exactly.
grow that. So first of all, we have to be in it together. It requires everybody to be leaning in and part of the solution. So often women kind of take on that, oh, you lead the diversity agenda, you lead and actually it's not about that. We've got to be inclusive. And then you come right back to the leader and about the passion and the intention and the authenticity. Yeah. Right person, right role, leading the charge and making things happen. Without the labels. I would love to see more of that in society.
Yeah. And I think that's quite offensive of somebody to think like that, because like you say, there's no understanding. I mean, somebody might look at me and not realize, the kind of socioeconomic, transition that I've been on in my journey, or, I might have a hidden disability that nobody knows about. There could be I might be neurodiverse. Nobody knows, do they? Right. And the reality is it shouldn't matter.
It shouldn't matter. It shouldn't matter at all. But I love that the fact that we are working with you, which is one of the strongest ambassadors and advocates of this agenda. And it goes right through to, back to what I said earlier, right through to your very core, with authenticity and a belief system that is actually really rare, because you go after it as well. So you turn great intentions into amazing actions, and that's what we need, is the courage to persevere. So talk to us a little bit about, maybe, because there's so much wonderful stuff that you're doing, and you're clearly at the top of your game in an organization that's very supportive, but we've all had our challenges, and I think this is the thing about labeling as well. We all experience our highs and our lows along the way. Maybe share a little bit about when you've experienced some challenges and some of the darker side, and how you've work through that.
Yeah. I mean, we all have our ups and downs, don't we? And I think I'm a Buddhist, so I believe very much in not happiness being a transient state, and happiness is not the goal, it's kind of the road, it's kind of the journey. And I'm much more focused on contentment. So if I have bad days, and can I tell you my bad daily, I left my suitcase on a train yesterday, and my suitcase is now in Carlisle, which is 2 hours away from me. So like, that's a bad day. But I think we have bad days, but it's about maintaining a kind of general contentment. So, but that can be really tested. And I think back particularly to one Christmas a few years ago, where I was made redundant 3 days before Christmas. Which was a classy act, I thought, at the time. I won't go into details. Maybe I should, but I won't. My daughter on Christmas Eve, she collapsed on the station, and we got a phone call from a mobile phone, but it was a complete stranger ringing us off her phone. So we spent Christmas Eve in A&E trying to understand that. And then on Boxing Day, my wife slipped a disc badly, that meant she had to then have an operation, reconstructive spinal surgery. And my elder daughter had come home from uni with an existential crisis about how she picked the wrong degree. So the Hamilton household that Christmas was not necessarily a content place, but I think we work through it. I very much believe, if you take my redundancy, for instance, I think that shaped me. there's this lovely moniker, and I can't remember again where I picked it up from, but pain plus reflection equals progress. It's a very painful process to go through that. But when I reflected on it, I realized that, what had I done to put myself in that position? It's very easy to blame everybody else. Very easy to look at that scenario and think, well, that person did that to me, and that's so unfair. I'll actually look at it and go, okay, right, over the past period of time, what have I done that's contributed to that? And I think unless you do that, you can't move forwards from that. And I'm now in far better, certainly CPO, certainly HR director doing what I do. I have to have difficult conversations in the role I have. But I tell you what, the dignity and respect I hope I bring to those conversations is totally shaped by my own experience of having been through them. The ability to, connect with people and recognize the impact on people. It's certainly something that I feel I'm so much better at. And a lot of my success has come from that period in my life.
Yeah.
Solely because I reflected on it and thought, how do I use this to become a better version of myself?
Yeah, lovely. I'd add another one to that. So pain plus reflection plus perspective equals progress. And just keeping perspective. And having a son in the police, it's like there's an occasional call that would come through in the middle of the night, where I know that something is not quite right, and something's happened, but your first place is everybody okay?
Yeah.
And from there, you can work up, is everybody okay? Is everybody safe? And then you can work through from there. So thank you.
I'm going to add to it now, perspective. I've modified it now.
Have you?
Yeah, I have. Thank you for that.
That's all right. Okay. What would you say are the strategic priorities that are really focusing your mind as a chief people officer right now, both within the organization, but also in life itself? What are your own strategic priorities for you?
Well, okay, let's talk about the organization. It is, how do I support the organization grow? This business is amazing, but the conversations feel like being on Dragon's Den sometimes. It's like, how are you going to double my money? How are you going to double the growth of the business? And that only happens if the people team is orientated and in a position to support that. So that's what drives me, is every part of what we do. How is my team able to scale and be effective in supporting the business? In terms of myself, I don't know. I mean, I've got to stop going on courses and learning. I mean, I did a PhD a couple of years ago, and that was really, I felt like that's it. My brain can't absorb any more information, but I'm sure at some point there'll be some more learning that comes my way at some point. And I love what I do. I love the developmental side of what I do. We had our graduate community. So we are 1 year into a brand new graduate program. We've got probably 12 grads across our business now. We'll have about 18 or 20 by the end of this year. And we bring them all together every quarter for a kind of networking, team building type event. And we ran our first one at the start of this year when they all came in. And we've just run the second one. And the change in these people, they're so confident and knowledgeable and just awesome. Just how, those time-lapse videos that show seeds coming out the ground like this in a matter of seconds. It's just, that's exactly what these people are like. They're just so energized right at the very start of their careers. And I feel honored that we're giving them that opportunity, and just to see these people blossom right before your very eyes is just awesome. So that kind of growth thing for me is just fantastic.
Yeah, so talking about the next gen, because especially with what's happening across the UK at the moment, and it's been a long time building, there's a lot of fear, anxiety building up, particularly for people that are applying for jobs, thinking about their careers. And again, from your experience, it's like, what words of advice would you give to them?
I think I love the word authenticity, and I worry that in an AI world, people will go on ChatGPT and say, write me an application form or write me a CV or whatever, and we'll just get this identikit, I want to see people's personality. I want to understand more about them. What is it that makes them tick? If you go to my interview question, why Bellrock, why this role, why now? I'm looking for the difference between the pull and the push factor. What is pulling you towards my business? Why do you want to come and work here versus anywhere else? Versus the push factor, which is, I can't stand my job, or my commute's too long, or like, okay, that might be partly the truth, but like literally you've got to give me more than that. So, be authentic. How are you going to come across to me? Because I think that's what will make you stand out. And a wonderful chat GPT CV, and you can spot them because they all the words have got Z's in them instead of S's because they're Americanized, right? So you can spot them, but they're just bland. It's not standing out. So from my perspective, find a way of being authentic. And it's really hard because everything's automated, everything's online. It's very impersonal approach. It's a very impersonal thing applying for a job now. So you've got to find a way to stand out, and I think the way you do that is by injecting your personality into the way that you're interacting with a prospective employer.
Lovely. Now, you're a great lover of books and learning. So what's the book that you're reading at the moment and that you're really enjoying? What's your favorite one?
Well, the book I've just finished was Anthony Seldon's account of Liz Truss's 40 however many days in number 10, which is
not Liz Truss's version of her.
No, it's his version based on umpteen accounts and interviews. It's amazing. Like, you cannot believe the country was being run. I'm not being political, I'm making a political point, but just general competence around there. It's extraordinary, that. My favorite book of all time, and I was tipped off that you might ask me, is this book here. This is my favorite book, and it's non-fiction. It's Andrew Chaikin's book, A Man to the Moon, and it talks about the Apollo moon program, right from its origins right through to its ending in the early 70s, and obviously covers landing on the moon. But I love it it's just such an awesome tale of human endeavor. And just when we put our minds to it, what is possible, what they overcame. As Kennedy said, we'll put a man in the moon and return them safe to Earth. We will, using technologies that haven't been invented yet, using materials that haven't been discovered yet, and we did that within 10 years of him saying that. And it really inspires me that, like, whatever problem I'm faced with, whatever thing I need to overcome, there'll be a solution. Like, I don't want to sound arrogant, but like, we will get there. We will find a way around this. With my books hat on, this too will pass, right? So whatever our problem is, whatever our obstacle is, we'll get by it. And that book is awesome for that. It just goes into a lot of detail around the human element of this, around the process and the technology and so on and so forth, the politics as well, of course. So it's a terrific read.
Okay. And sticking with that self-care, self-development type area, how do you look after yourself through all of this? Because mental health and well-being, mental health is on the rise. The demands around us are on the rise. And so how do you look after yourself, or even help to create that for other people?
Well, personally, it's a combination of meditation and exercise and diet. So I'm vegan. I'm Buddhist, so I meditate every day, and then I like to get on my bike, and I like to run and walk and get out and about. So without those things, I mean, my job's pretty stressful. Without any one of those three things, I kind of struggle. So and that's not always easy when you're out on the road a lot. I am world class at finding good walking routes near hotels. So whether they be parks or canals or whatever, I will sniff out a good walking route. So that's, from a personal perspective, that's what I do. And I guess, from my wider team, it's just about checking in with them. So showing thanks and appreciation and being grateful for the contribution that they're making. My people team are based UK wide, so it's finding the opportunities just to check in with them, whether it's dropping them a WhatsApp or just teamsing them out of the blue just to say hello. One of the things we did was my entire team, we've got a kudos a chat on Teams where we're all in there, and we will just drop in there thanks and appreciation between ourselves for a job well done. Or if a customer, a colleague elsewhere in a business has said good things, we'll drop that in there and give a shout out to the team member. And I like to think that that's creating that sense of community and that sense of reward for the effort that they're putting in, because they work super hard. But I don't want anybody to feel like they're, I'm not grateful for what they do.
And that's really unusual. So quite often, especially when we're under pressure and stress, is we're kind of pointing to the fires and to put them out and all the challenges and the issues, and that we sometimes forget how powerful appreciation is. I think it was Nancy Klein in her book, More Time to Think. And she talks about practicing on a ratio of 5 to 1. So 5 being appreciation within the organization, and 1 being kind of that, not criticism, but critique, healthy
critique. Yeah.
Very different. Who are the leaders who have inspired you, and why? What do you appreciate about them?
Well, here's a story. Like my dad told me right at the start of my career. He said, when you work for a manager, right, take one good thing they do and one bad thing they do and learn from it. And he says, no matter how bad you think they may be, and I've worked for some shockers in my time, right? Somebody makes redundant 3 days before Christmas is probably on that list. But they don't get to that position without being good at something. So there's always something that you can learn about what they do. And I've tried to do that. In terms of my personal heroes, I mean, Sir Ernest Shackleton is my personal hero for, the sheer efforts he took leading his men on the trans-Antarctic expedition that was where his boat sank and they had to survive for years across the ice and stuff. I mean, that anybody that's not familiar with that story, it needs to check that out, because again, it's a little bit like the lunar program. It's like, there is nothing that you can't overcome when you read what he did. And I actually got a lecture that I delivered to our grads and our internal management team where I talked to them about Shackleton for an hour. I must sound pretty boring, but at the outset, you put a photograph of him on the screen. Does anybody know who this is? And they'll look at it blankly. And they, most of them have never heard of him. And you go, okay, right, strap yourselves in. This is going to be an interesting ride for you, because if you don't know that story, then at every turn you're going to go, surely not. No, surely not. If they made a film of it, people go, that's ridiculous. That would never happen.
Yeah.
So I learn a lot from Shackleton. I learn a lot from, his resolution and that transformational leadership style. Being one of the men, not being prepared to ask someone to do a job you're not prepared to do yourself. Confronting difficult decisions. Like it's an awe-inspiring story that translates to the modern world. As leadership heroes go, I don't see many better than him, if I'm honest.
Yeah, I'll put that on my reading list. I know that Jonathan's certainly read it. It would be right up his street, and I think he's mentioned it. So, but I have not read it, but I'll make it my.
I've got a library of stuff. I'm not saying I'm a Shackleton bore or anything, but I do have a.
I believe you. Don't worry.
Yeah, I have a library of them, but also the other thing that's worth watching if you want an easier access into it is Kenneth Branagh did a dramatization of it, Channel 4.
Lovely.
That is incredible. Yeah, it's like £8 on Amazon. It is incredible. It's very authentic to the story. What Branagh did was capture the visuals, because a lot of photography from the mission, and he shot it in a way that's authentic to the imagery that you'll be familiar with if you know the story. So it's a really wonderful way to appreciate the story, is to watch Branagh's adaptation, because it really does it justice.
So that leads me on to, so clearly Shackleton is making an impact and inspiring people far beyond, the people that he's never met in his life, the people that, from generation to generation, that story lives on. So as you think about what story lives on, and you think of your own legacy, what would you like your own inspiring leadership legacy to be as you look back and you feel a sense of pride about the impact, the footprint that you've left on the world? What would you like that to be?
Oh, there's a story, isn't it? There's a question. I don't know. I mean, I'm a fan of the Jim Collins stuff, Good to Great, Built to Last. great by choice. That, you know, he the research stuff that he's done looking at what makes great companies is really inspiring to me. But one of the things he talks about is greatness needs to transcend individuals. Like I might do some good stuff now, but if I leave, if it doesn't survive me, if it doesn't, it
Yeah,
doesn't leave that legacy, it's not great.
yeah,
So
yeah.
for me, it comes back down to that embedding the changes, embedding the difference that you're making into the way that you do things. I love that definition of culture. It's the way we do things around here. So
Yeah.
by just changing the way that we talk, the way that we behave, the way that we, develop colleagues or whatever it might be. I want, my legacy would be if that stuff, all the good stuff that my team are doing, just carries on, and whether I'm here or not. I'm not planning on going anywhere anyway, by the way, in case my
You
team are
better not
watching.
be. We've got lots of work to do. We've got big
I
plans.
have, yeah, totally.
Mm.
But yeah, for me, it's about that legacy. It is about the legacy. And it's funny because the ultimate endorsement of that, right, is would you want your kids to work in the organization that you work for,
Yeah,
right, doing what
yeah.
you do? And my daughter joined Bellrock about 4 months ago. So,
Oh,
in a, and that's such a great story. She's married, right? So she doesn't have the same surname as me. So she applied for a job. I signposted it. I made the hiring manager aware. I said, look, I'm not getting involved. It's nothing to do with me, right? So she applied for this job, and there were 200 applicants, and she interviewed under her married name because obviously she would, and she got the job. And I couldn't be prouder. And people are
yeah.
obviously meeting her and having a view on what it's like to work at Bellrock.
Great
So
place
she's
for
like,
shame like that CPO.
yeah, that CPO is a bit of a nightmare, isn't he? But she's again, she's not backwards at coming forwards, is my daughter. So she is, she will tell me things that she likes the look of.
Yeah.
And she's very quick to tell me about things that could be better. So yeah,
Love it.
from a legacy perspective, like, I suppose the fact that you're perfectly happy for your own kids to come and work here is as good as it gets, I think.
What's interesting is how many leaders we work with that might not have the same thought process. And I've worked in many of those organizations as well, where I would just, I'd be saying, stay away. So that's, again, credit to Bellrock and the team there, the whole team, because actually HR has a huge role to play in creating that culture and that environment. So a big...
Yeah, I just make the stuff up, Leigh.
Yeah, you're just...
People have to get on and do
They're
it.
just lifting,
I'm
pedaling
taking all the
away
credit.
in the background.
Yeah, exactly. I'm taking all the credit for it, but there's better people out there than
Yeah.
me. So.
Yeah. So, well, I look forward to meeting them at some point in the future. So let's leave with a top tip. What's your one top tip to leave our leaders with today?
Well, I just two things I'd say, right? So the first thing is I'll share with you my life motto, right? And which is what powers me. If you want to know me, you've got to understand my life motto, and that's that I won't die wondering. I don't leave a lot on the table. I like to experience lots of different things. I want to know, and why did I do a PhD? Because I wanted to know that I could, right? A stupid reason to do it, but I just don't want to die wondering. So that's what powers me. And I think there's a lot in that. Like, we're not here for very long, and it soon flashes by. So make the most out of it in everything you do, not just work. I think that when I look at my career, the thing I wish I'd learned younger was to be a little bit more patient and not try quite so hard, and just let things come to me a bit more, because I can definitely look back at a point where that I started to recognize the importance of that, and guess what, things magically started to happen. So when I started to show a bit more belief in myself, I do get a bit of imposter syndrome, like we all do, really. But once I built that belief in myself, then good things happened. And I think if I could have gone back, I wish I'd recognized that 10 or 15 years earlier, really. But
Lovely. And actually, just building on that top tip a little bit further, because this is the Inspiring Women Leaders podcast. Is there any further build, or is that the same message for men and women that would be listening today?
It's totally the same. I mean, what I'd say to women is truly believe in yourself. Like, you know, I know it's harder. I know it's harder to make it in sectors that are more male dominated, but just have belief in yourself. I'll share a little anecdote with you. So I know that women find it harder to ask for pay rises. Okay, so it doesn't, there's good evidence that says women aren't get one of the gender pay gap issues are women don't ask. So I was determined that my daughters would not be in this situation. So I shared with them the learning that I got from an advanced negotiation training course I went on years ago, which I absolutely love. This course, the thing that stuck in my mind, this course about educating you how to negotiate with for anything, and the hierarchy of negotiation around emotion, logic, bargain, compromise, threat. That's the hierarchy, and putting that into practice, and particularly the use of silence as a negotiation team. So I'm dealing with one of my daughters, and I'll try and be vague here because I don't want to embarrass them, but they're going for a pay rise. I've been in this job a while, I'm feeling underpaid, I'm delivering all this value, and I don't know how to ask for a pay rise. So I said, something down, right, okay, here's what you need to do. You need to use this as the negotiation hierarchy. You come up with your pitch. It's short and succinct. Don't go into, this is what you're going to say, right? And then say nothing, right? You're going to use silence, okay? Right. So we rehearsed it a couple of times, right?
Yeah.
So she rings me up that night. I said, how did it go? She said, yeah, it went really well. She says, yeah, they're gonna look at it. They're gonna, they appreciate what you. They're gonna. I said, and how was the silence? She went, oh my God, Dad, it was really hard. It was really hard to say nothing because you want to keep talking.
Yeah.
But did you say? She says, yeah, I said nothing, because with silence, when you're in a negotiation, the next person to speak usually gives ground. So I feel so proud that I'm determined my kids aren't going to be like disadvantaged just because of their gender. That is not happening.
I love it. I wonder if Sue Gray also went to the same course, and maybe
she did right herself, didn't
she?
She did okay.
Well. So very pertinent and prevalent to today's news. Look, John, as always, you are truly an inspiring leader on so many different levels. It's been an absolute privilege to have you on the call today. We'll all learn so much from your wisdom, but wishing you every success for the future and keep inspiring.
Thank you. Thanks for your time, Leigh, and thanks for all the great work you do. We get so much out of our relationship in our business, and I encourage anybody that wants to find a partner to help to help advance the interests of young women and people looking to find their way in the world, just to get in touch with you, because there's so much they can learn from that, as well as the expertise they can give to you guys.
Okay. Well, thank you for that, John. It means so much. We're very proud of the work that we do, but when it's endorsed by other people, then that's the stamp of approval that says, yes, we're doing the right thing. So thank you for that, and thank you for today.
Yeah, thanks, Leigh. Thank you.